What happens in the moment your heart stops beating? Is consciousness extinguished like a flame, or does it transform into something greater? For centuries, humanity has pondered these questions without certainty, until one man began speaking of realms beyond with such precision that even skeptics paused to listen. He didn't wear religious robes or claim divine authority. He was a simple photographer from Kentucky with a 9th grade education. Yet when Edgar Cayce closed his eyes and entered what appeared to be sleep, something extraordinary occurred. His voice changed, his knowledge expanded, and he began describing journeys into dimensions that exist beyond physical death, not as vague spiritual concepts, but as mapped territories with distinct stages, transitions, and experiences. The phenomenon began unexpectedly. In 1901, the young Cayce lost his voice completely, a condition that persisted for nearly a year. When conventional medicine failed him, he experimented with hypnosis as a desperate measure. Under hypnotic suggestion, Cayce not only diagnosed his own condition, but prescribed a treatment that restored his speech. This marked the beginning of what would become over 14,000 documented readings given during self-induced trance states throughout his lifetime. During these sessions, witnesses reported that his breathing would slow, his eyelids would flutter, and then a voice unlike his ordinary speaking voice would emerge, deeper, more measured, and speaking with an authority that seemed to transcend his limited formal education. Cayce himself was often troubled by the information that came through him while in trance, particularly when it contradicted his own conservative Christian beliefs. He struggled to reconcile his conscious mind's understanding of spiritual matters with the expansive cosmology that emerged during his readings. Yet the consistency of these visions and their healing impact on thousands who sought his help gradually convinced him of their authenticity. While history remembers many prophets and seers, what distinguished Cayce was the methodical documentation of his trance states. His secretary, Gladys Davis, transcribed nearly every word he spoke while entranced, creating one of the most extensive recorded archives of psychic material in modern history. These transcripts reveal not occasional glimpses, but a coherent spiritual cosmology that includes detailed descriptions of the soul's journey after physical death. Medical professionals who initially sought to expose Cayce as a fraud often became his most dedicated supporters after witnessing the accuracy of his diagnostic abilities. Using only a person's name and location without any physical examination, Cayce could describe internal conditions with remarkable precision, often identifying problems that conventional medicine had missed or misdiagnosed. This demonstrated accuracy in verifiable physical matters, lent credibility to his descriptions of non-physical realms that lay beyond empirical verification. When questioned about these abilities, Cayce offered a simple explanation. In the trance state, his consciousness accessed what he called the universal consciousness, a field of awareness containing all knowledge past, present, and future. Within this expanded state, physical distance and material limitations ceased to constrain perception, allowing him to view both the human body and the spiritual realms with equal clarity. What made Cayce's trances remarkable wasn't just their consistency or the medical accuracy they often demonstrated. It was that when questioned about the afterlife, a realm beyond empirical verification, he didn't respond with vague platitudes or familiar religious imagery. Instead, he described specific stages, energetic transitions, and dimensional shifts, with the precision of a cartographer mapping unknown territory. The sources of his knowledge remained mysterious. Cayce himself claimed no special spiritual status, often expressing surprise when shown transcripts of what he had said while entranced. This humble man became known as the Sleeping Prophet, though he rejected such titles, considering himself merely a channel through which information flowed. His personal humility stands in stark contrast to the cosmic scope of his revelations. a paradox that many who met him found both puzzling and profoundly moving. Perhaps most compelling was Cayce's insistence that what he perceived wasn't supernatural, but natural, not miraculous, but simply accessing deeper laws of reality that conventional science had yet to recognize. He believed that the apparent separation between physical and spiritual realms was an illusion born of limited perception, and that all existence operated as a unified field governed by precise spiritual principles. Death, in this framework, wasn't a punishment or an ending, but a transition governed by natural spiritual laws, as exact and predictable as the physical laws governing material existence. This perspective offered comfort to many by suggesting that death, like all natural processes, unfolds according to an intelligent design rather than random chaos. Edgar Cayce didn't just glimpse the afterlife, he mapped it with remarkable detail. Through thousands of documented readings in a trance state, this unassuming man revealed what many believe to be the most comprehensive blueprint of what awaits us all. His descriptions weren't couched in religious dogma or mystical symbolism, but presented as straightforward observations of souls transitioning from one state of being to another. Unlike contemporary near-death experiences, which offer brief glimpses beyond the veil, Cayce's accounts provide a cohesive cosmology, a step-by-step journey of the soul from the moment of physical release through various states of awareness, culminating in either return through reincarnation or advancement to higher spiritual planes. For those who have lost someone or who wonder about their own mortality, Cayce's revelations offer something rare, a coherent picture of death, not as an ending, but as a carefully orchestrated journey homeward. According to Edgar Cayce, the soul's departure from the body isn't characterized by darkness or confusion, but by a profound sense of liberation. The first stage of death is a gentle release, like removing a heavy coat after carrying its weight for decades. The soul rises from the physical form and experiences a momentary perspective shift, often hovering near the body, observing the scene below with clarity and without fear. This isn't depicted as a traumatic separation, but rather as a natural awakening. Physical pain ceases instantly, replaced by a lightness of being that Cayce described as the soul's first realization, that it exists independent of its earthly vessel. In his readings, Cayce often emphasized that this transition moment is accompanied by a sense of expansion, as if the consciousness suddenly has access to a wider spectrum of awareness than was possible while confined within the limitations of physical senses. This initial separation brings with it a profound reorientation of perception. The soul no longer experiences reality through the limited filter of physical senses, but perceives directly through what Cayce called soul senses, modes of awareness that operate outside the constraints of the material world. Colors become more vivid, extending beyond the visible spectrum. Sounds include harmonics normally inaudible to human ears. Thought becomes immediately perceptible, and time loses its linear progression, with past, present, and future appearing as accessible dimensions rather than a fixed sequence. Many souls report a moment of astonishment at this expanded perception, a realization that what they had considered reality during physical life was merely a narrow band within a much broader spectrum of experience. This expansion isn't overwhelming or disorienting, but feels instead like remembering something long forgotten, a return to a more natural state of being. Cayce's readings suggest that this transition varies somewhat depending on the individual's spiritual development and the circumstances of their death. Those who cultivated spiritual awareness during life often experience a more conscious transition, immediately recognizing what is happening and adapting quickly to their non-physical state. Those who maintained rigid materialistic beliefs may experience a period of confusion or disbelief as their consciousness adjusts to a reality they had previously rejected as impossible. This isn't punishment, but simply the natural consequence of deeply held beliefs encountering a broader reality. For those who die suddenly or traumatically, there may be a brief period of disorientation. But Cayce emphasized that this quickly gives way to clarity as the soul's natural awareness reasserts itself beyond the shock of unexpected physical death. This initial separation is often accompanied by what Cayce termed the silver cord, an energetic connection that maintains a link between the physical body and the departing soul until the transition is complete. This cord, described in various spiritual traditions, gradually dissolves as the soul adjusts to its non-physical state. Cayce suggested that medical death, the cessation of bodily functions, doesn't always coincide precisely with spiritual departure. In some cases, the soul begins its separation process slightly before clinical death, particularly in cases of prolonged illness or coma, while in others, aspects of consciousness may remain loosely connected to the body for a short period after medical death has been pronounced. This explains why some people in near-death states report awareness of medical procedures being performed on their bodies after they were technically dead. Many of Cayce's readings describe a moment of meeting during this initial transition, an encounter with luminous beings who come to assist the newly released soul. These aren't stereotypical angels with wings, but presences of light that emanate what can only be described as unconditional love. Some souls recognize these beings as departed loved ones, appearing not as they did at the moment of their death, but in their prime, radiating health and vitality. Others perceive them as spiritual guides who have accompanied them throughout many lifetimes, though their presence was veiled during physical existence. This meeting isn't described as theological judgment, but as a profound reunion, a welcome home after a long journey. The quality of this welcome remains consistent regardless of the life led. Cayce emphasized repeatedly that all souls are met with love, though their capacity to perceive and receive this love may vary based on their own spiritual development. For some souls, particularly those who maintain strong religious beliefs, during life, this transition may align with their expectations. Christians might perceive Jesus or angels. Buddhists might encounter aspects of the bardo states described in their traditions. Muslims might experience elements consistent with Islamic teachings about the afterlife. Cayce explained that these culturally influenced perceptions aren't illusions but personalized interpretations of universal spiritual realities, shaped to provide comfort and familiarity during the transition. The underlying spiritual mechanics remain consistent despite these varied perceptions, like travelers from different countries describing the same landscape in different languages. This compassionate accommodation of belief systems demonstrates what Cayce described as the loving intelligence orchestrating the transition process. What follows this initial separation is what Cayce called the transition sleep, a period of rest and adjustment where the soul processes its release from physical reality. During this phase, which may last moments or days in Earth time, the soul remains close to loved ones, sometimes trying to communicate its continued existence. Many don't immediately realize they've died, experiencing a period of gentle confusion as they adjust to their non-physical state. Cayce described how souls in this transitional phase often attempt to interact with the physical world using the same sensory apparatus they relied upon in life, not yet fully recognizing that they now perceive reality through different means. They might try to speak to grieving family members or touch familiar objects, gradually coming to understand that their relationship with the material world has fundamentally changed. This explains, Cayce suggested, why the recently departed often appear in dreams, or why their presence is sometimes felt in places they frequented. They aren't ghosts caught between worlds, but souls in adjustment, gradually awakening to their new reality while completing their earthly connections. The length and nature of this transition period vary widely depending on the individual soul's attachment to physical life and their preparation for the transition. Those who lived with spiritual awareness, who contemplated mortality, and who cultivated non-attachment often move through this phase quickly. Those with strong attachments to people, possessions, unfinished business, or unresolved emotions may linger longer in this intermediate state. Cayce emphasized that this isn't punishment or being stuck, but simply a natural process of completion and release at the soul's own pace. For those who experience sudden or traumatic death, this adjustment period may be longer, as the soul needs time to process not only its transition, but also the circumstances surrounding it. Cayce emphasized that souls are never alone during this process. Spiritual guides, often including deceased loved ones, assist in this adjustment phase, gently orienting the newly arrived soul to its changed circumstances, providing reassurance, and facilitating the release of earthly attachments with patience and compassion. Perhaps the most profound stage in Cayce's map of the afterlife is what modern accounts often call the life review. In this phase, the soul doesn't merely recall its experiences, but relives them from multiple perspectives simultaneously. According to Cayce, this isn't a judgment imposed from outside, but a profound moment of self-recognition. The soul experiences not only its own emotions through life, but also how its actions affected others, feeling their joy when kindness was shown, their pain when harm was done. This panoramic memory occurs outside linear time, with the entire life visible at once, like points on a map rather than as a sequential story. Cayce described this experience as being bathed in the light of understanding, where the true impact of seemingly small decisions becomes clear, and the hidden motives behind major life choices are revealed without defense or self-deception. The life review isn't just about actions, but encompasses thoughts, intentions, and opportunities, both taken and missed. Cayce emphasized that the soul reviews not only what it did, but what it might have done if it had made different choices. These alternate paths aren't shown to induce regret, but to foster complete comprehension of the soul's journey. Every prayer offered, every moment of compassion shown, every act of service performed, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, radiates with particular brightness in this review. Conversely, moments of cruelty, selfishness, or indifference are experienced with heightened awareness of their full impact. Cayce stated that souls are often surprised to discover that their most celebrated accomplishments in life may hold less spiritual significance than small forgotten acts of kindness that rippled outward in ways they never recognized while alive. What makes this review unique in Cayce's description is that it occurs within a field of unconditional love. There is no external judgment, only the soul's growing awareness of itself in relation to others and to the greater spiritual principles at work. The greatest judgment is the truth you see for yourself, was how Cayce summarized this process. The soul witnesses its achievements, failures, and missed opportunities, not with crushing guilt, but with a profound understanding that everything experienced served its growth. Even moments of deepest failure are viewed not as condemnation, but as necessary lessons in the soul's evolution. This compassionate perspective doesn't diminish responsibility, but places it within a larger context of eternal development. For many souls, Cayce indicated, this review may be the first time they truly understand the purpose of certain hardships or challenges they faced in life, seeing how difficulties that seemed random or unfair were actually catalysts for specific aspects of spiritual development. This review culminates in a moment of recognition where the soul finally sees itself clearly, not as the limited identity it held in life, but as an eternal being temporarily experiencing physical reality for purposes of growth and service. In this recognition comes what Cayce called the Judgment Day, not an external sentence, but the soul's own reckoning with itself in perfect honesty and perfect love. One of the most distinctive elements of Cayce's cosmology is his description of what he called the planetary spheres, or levels of consciousness, through which the soul travels after death. These aren't physical planets, but vibrational frequencies corresponding to different aspects of spiritual development. Each sphere offers unique lessons and environments, matching the soul's level of evolution. Mercury represents the realm of intellect and communication. Venus embodies love and harmony. Mars corresponds to strength and will. Jupiter represents wisdom and expansion. Saturn encompasses discipline and responsibility. The higher spheres of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto correlate to increasingly refined states of consciousness that few souls immediately access. Cayce emphasized that these spheres aren't arbitrary constructs, but fundamental organizing principles in the spiritual cosmos, similar to how musical notes organize into scales or how colors arrange themselves in the spectrum of light. The movement through these spheres isn't linear but holographic. Souls don't necessarily progress from Mercury to Venus to Mars in sequence. Rather, they experience aspects of each sphere as needed for their development. Some souls might spend significant time in the Mercury sphere, developing intellectual clarity, before moving to Venus to develop heart-centered awareness. Others might need the discipline of Saturn before they can properly integrate the expansive wisdom of Jupiter. Cayce described how the soul resonates with each sphere according to what it needs most at that stage of its eternal journey. This resonance creates a natural attraction, an effortless gravitational pull toward the correct vibrational environment for optimal growth. There is no external authority assigning souls to various realms. The process unfolds through perfect spiritual principles of attraction and resonance. Within each sphere, souls encounter others at similar stages of development. Cayce described these encounters not as chance meetings, but as purposeful reunions with soul groups, or clusters of beings who have traveled together through many incarnations, often playing different roles in each other's lives across multiple lifetimes. A soul might meet someone who was once a parent, another time a child, another time an adversary, all roles undertaken for mutual growth and learning. These reunions are characterized by instant recognition at the soul level, transcending the physical identities they once held. Communication in these spheres occurs not through words, but through direct thought transference, immediate, complete, and without the possibility of misunderstanding. Concepts that might take hours to explain in physical reality are understood instantaneously in these refined states of awareness. The soul naturally gravitates to the sphere that matches its dominant vibration, much like a musical note finding its harmonic resonance. Those who lived primarily through intellect might first experience the Mercury sphere. Those who embodied love would resonate with Venus. This isn't arbitrary placement, but perfect attunement. In these spheres, the soul meets others of similar development, often including loved ones who passed before them. According to Cayce, these reunions are characterized by a profound sense of recognition, not of the physical forms they once occupied, but of the eternal essence that animated those forms. Souls recognize each other instantly, without introduction, across the boundaries of their many shared lifetimes. Cayce described how emotions that seem overwhelming in physical life, grief, loss, betrayal, are understood in these spheres within their greater context, allowing for healing and reconciliation that might have seemed impossible on Earth. Each planetary sphere serves as a classroom of sorts, where souls receive exactly the experiences needed for their current stage of development. Cayce emphasized that souls aren't trapped in any sphere, but can progress as their consciousness expands. The pace of this journey varies. Some souls quickly move through many spheres, while others might remain in one state for what would be experienced as years or even centuries in Earth time, deepening their understanding before advancing. This pacing is neither reward nor punishment, but simply the natural rhythm of each soul's unique development. Some require extended periods of integration, others progress rapidly through states of awareness. Cayce stressed that this journey isn't competitive. The goal isn't to advance faster than others, but to fully experience and integrate the wisdom each sphere offers. For souls that harbored excessive fear, hatred, or attachment during physical life. The lower vibrational spheres provide healing environments where these limiting energies can be gradually transformed, not through punishment, but through understanding their root causes and experiencing their resolution. The final stage. In Cayce's map reveals perhaps his most revolutionary concept, the soul's choice about its next journey. After experiencing the life review and spending time in the appropriate planetary spheres, the soul enters what Cayce called the Hall of Records, or the Akashic Records, a dimension where all experiences of all souls throughout time are accessible. These records aren't physical books or scrolls, but a living energetic matrix containing the complete history of every soul's journey. Here, in this vast repository of cosmic memory, the soul can access not only its own past experiences across multiple lifetimes, but also the interconnected web of relationships, causes, and effects that shaped its journey. This access isn't intellectual but experiential. The soul directly perceives patterns and connections that would be impossible to comprehend within the limitations of physical awareness. Within this expansive state of awareness, the soul consults with what Cayce called counsel, or guides, advanced beings who assist in the navigation of the soul's eternal journey. These guides aren't dictatorial authorities, but wise companions offering perspective without judgment or coercion. Some guides may be souls with whom the individual shared previous incarnations, perhaps as teachers, parents, or friends, while others are beings who have evolved beyond the cycle of earthly incarnation altogether. Cayce described these relationships not as hierarchical, but as expressions of spiritual mentorship and compassionate service. The soul reviews not just its past life, but its entire journey across multiple incarnations. It sees the patterns, the lessons learned and unlearned, the karmic connections with other souls, and the purposes yet unfulfilled. This comprehensive review illuminates the soul's progress along what Cayce termed its ideal, the unique purpose or trajectory of its evolutionary path. Some souls are developing primarily through service to others, some through creative expression, some through the cultivation of wisdom or compassion. No two soul journeys are identical, though they interweave in intricate patterns of mutual support and growth. With the clarity of this expanded perspective, the soul perceives precisely what experiences would best facilitate its continued development. If certain qualities remain underdeveloped, perhaps compassion, courage, or forgiveness, the soul may recognize that another physical incarnation offers the optimal environment for cultivating these attributes. If significant karmic patterns remain unresolved with other souls, another lifetime may provide opportunities to balance these energetic accounts, not through punishment, but through healing and reconciliation. Then comes the choice to return to Earth in a new incarnation or to continue evolving in non-physical realms. This decision isn't made lightly, but with full awareness of its implications. Those who choose to return aren't punished, but volunteer for another opportunity to grow through physical experience. Contrary to many Eastern traditions that view reincarnation as a wheel of suffering from which the soul seeks escape, Cayce presented physical incarnation as a precious opportunity, a specially designed environment offering accelerated growth through the intensity of material existence. The limitations of physical life, linear time, material constraints, the veil of forgetting one's eternal nature, create unique conditions that allow for particular kinds of soul development difficult to achieve in non-physical realms. The forgetting itself serves a purpose, allowing the soul to make authentic choices without the overwhelming awareness of its full cosmic identity. Those who choose to return select the circumstances of their birth, their parents, time period, location, and even the major challenges they'll face, not randomly but purposefully, as a curriculum designed for specific development. Cayce described how souls often incarnate in groups, agreeing to play various roles in each other's lives to facilitate mutual growth and healing. What appears from the limited earthly perspective as tragic circumstance or unfair limitation is revealed in this expanded state as precisely calibrated opportunity. The soul doesn't choose difficulty for its own sake, but recognizes that certain challenges offer the exact resistance needed to develop specific spiritual muscles. This planning phase may take what would be experienced as considerable time in the earth dimension, with careful attention to the selection of optimal conditions for the soul's next chapter of development. Those who have completed their earthly cycles may choose to remain in the spiritual realms, often becoming guides for others still incarnating. These advanced souls have balanced their karma and learned the essential lessons the physical plane offers. They continue their evolution in subtler dimensions, taking on increasingly expansive roles in the cosmic order. Some become what Cayce called transition guides, helping newly deceased souls adjust to non-physical reality. Others serve as inspirational presences for those in physical form, occasionally reaching through the veil to offer guidance at crucial moments, experienced, perhaps as intuition, synchronicity, or spiritual insight. Still others participate in cosmic administration, helping to orchestrate the intricate tapestry of soul journeys across dimensions. Either way, Cayce insisted, the journey continues. Death is not an ending, he often said during his readings, but a transition from one state of consciousness to another. And in this understanding lies perhaps his greatest gift, the revelation that we are not temporary beings having occasional spiritual experiences, but eternal souls temporarily having human experiences, always on our way home.